This is Second Act Sessions with Stephanie Carmody, a podcast celebrating second acts in life about embracing change, questioning the status quo, and having conversations that really matter. If I've learned anything, it's that your second act is yours to define. No matter what chapter you're in, your second act can be the most powerful yet. Welcome to Second Act Sessions. Welcome, Carolyn. I'm so glad to have you here, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today, so thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Likewise. And so what I wanted to, I guess, first say to our listeners today is that children's health is very important to me. I mean, while I may not have children of my own, I have nieces who I love very much and would take a bullet for. But I just see so much happening with children today. Like, I really do feel like our children are in a crisis. I feel like personally they're being attacked from all ends, from, overly medicated or, medical harm or vaccine issues or toxic food or nervous system issues. I mean, it runs the gamut. And I know, Carolyn, this is what we've been discussing, is that so many of our children really do need our help. And I think not just the children, but the parents and the families who are struggling, trying to understand, behaviors like anxiety, ADD, ADHD, ODD, autism. I mean, it runs the gamut. And I do think it truly is a crisis now. And I'm so glad to have you on to share your knowledge and what you're doing to help children and families alike, especially moms. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today. So thank you so much. What I first wanted to, I guess, discuss is you created your company, you're founder of Live with Joy Now. You are an ADHD expert and coach. So can you, I guess, explain sort of what that entails? What is Live with Joy Now? And what does it mean when you say you are an ADHD coach? I mean, just briefly share what that is, and then we can get into how you got here, because your story is truly remarkable.
Oh, thanks. Of course. A funny thing about that name, Live with Joy Now, that website, I will just say that there were so many nights that spanned years that I would just be crying myself to sleep, or I'd be voraciously reading, like, what's the next story, the next needle in the haystack. I was always trying to find who has been recovered from these behaviors. And so when I got to the other side of it, and I got to the side of healing with Charlie, and I was creating, I wanted to put my story out there. I chose the name Live with Joy Now because I wanted parents to know, like, you don't have to suffer through it. I suffered through it. There were so many days that I didn't even enjoy Charlie because all I was thinking in the back of my mind was, are we moving the needle forward? Are we going backwards? Are we healing? Are we not? What should I be doing? What's the next specialist I should see? What's the next supplement he should be on? You are so distracted. And so that's the reason behind that name, Live with Joy Now, is because you can live with joy now in the process of healing, knowing the body is made for healing. And so you just provided the best conditions to do so, and you watch the needle move day after day. The healing is not linear, but you get there over time. So that was the reason that's Live with Joy Now. And that website really came from a place of, while I was going through it, a lot of time on my knees. And I was like, God, if you give me the answer, if you just show me how to do this, I promise I'll tell the story. And so, and the other thing was that what kept me like hopeful would be those needle in the haystack stories when some other mom, some random little story I would find. Maybe it was one mom's journey using the Feingold diet, which has to do with dyes, etc. But I would just keep piecing them together, and it would be that next story that made me go, okay, I'm going to keep going because she got recovery and she got recovery. And, oh, that kid sounds like my kid. And that part of that kid sounds like my kid. And so that's the purpose behind sharing that story. And the coaching from that organically came from that place. I mean, we could probably talk about the coaching specifically a little bit later, but
of course.
That's where that all came from. So I could teach another how to do what I did to bring the healing, just like I brought.
Right. Okay. So then you mentioned Charlie. Charlie is your son, who is how old now?
Oh my goodness. He is now a sophomore in high school. He has just turned 16.
Oh, that's amazing. And so Charlie is your child who had the behavioral issues. And could you then, I guess, go into what were his symptoms, I guess. And then, as you mentioned, you were trying and researching and figuring everything out. So share that journey, and then we can go into the details of how you ended up and how it all worked out for you.
Sure. So to put Charlie's journey kind of in a nutshell, it's funny. I call it like going from confusion to clarity, because I just walked in confusion all the time.
Right.
And so if I go back, so when he was little, I saw a lot of, like, even when he was young, like the 9 months, like the milestones that some of my other children were reaching, he wasn't reaching those milestones. And by the time he was about 15 months, we did the early intervention, where, you can call someone in and they have a team to come and assess. So he was qualified for those resources. So we would have somebody come to the house and do developmental like therapies. And because he had developmental delays, that's what they were calling it. Was
that his main issue initially that you saw, were the developmental delays,
or what it looked like was a lack of speech. He didn't even really have words until at least he was 3.5. And even at 4, it was very garbled. We used to call him fast forward, because I was even when he was 5.5, I was still translating for him to strangers. So he had a lot of behaviors, and it's funny because the reason I have these behaviors written out was because there are times that I've been called to places and to give my story, to give encouragement to other moms. Right. But one time I was called to a school, and parents of one of the children that I've been helping asked me, they orchestrated the meeting so that I could come and talk to the parents of the school. And I thought that was wonderful, because their child didn't even have much language. And now he was speaking, and it was wonderful. And right before I was going to speak, I got an email from the director of the program, and she said, "We're really looking forward to having you come. Just be careful. Please do not use words like healing or recovery, because we don't want to give false hope." And I'm like, "Ooh, okay." And I understood where she was coming from. And I had to take it in. And I thought, well, what's the point of my going if I can't use those kinds of words? So what I did instead, all of a sudden I thought, oh, well, you can call whatever you'd like, but literally, and don't worry, I won't read them all. These are over 60 behaviors that my son had when he was little. And I'm like, and now he doesn't have them. So you can call that.
Can you list a few of them? Was it meltdowns? What was it?
Oh, hold on. Let me get my reading glasses on here. Wow. All right. So I'm going to read just like some random ones, but
sure.
So in no particular order, extreme mood swings, extreme anxiety and emotion, inappropriate, almost maniacal-like laughing at times, endless temper tantrums, scripted conversations. His favorite one was, "Do you have a dog? Do you have a dog? Do you have a dog?"
Wow.
He wasn't potty trained until it was after age 4. His speech was very garbled and very quick. He had this constant chewing on his shirt sleeves. He did a lot of these sensory-seeking things. He had an insatiable need he had to always be pushing his chin into his hand. He had echolalia. So that was when if you spoke. So if I spoke to you right now and then you repeated the very last sentence or a word of what I said, that's called echolalia. So he started doing that.
Wow.
Inappropriate sounds that just weren't right for the time, or animal sounds he would just make. The inability to look in one's eyes when speaking. No imaginative play with his siblings. Constant hunger.
I was going to ask, did he also have issues with eating foods or certain foods, or what?
So I didn't recognize that he had any sensory issues with eating, because I just fed him whatever he wanted to eat. So it was like the chicken fingers and the mac and cheese and the pizza, and he loved his cookies. And I would try to be healthy, but not really healthy. I never bought in. This is way back then. I never bought into the idea like, oh, you have to do it this way and you have to pull all the... I was never a fearful parent. I used to think those parents that, were so, just scouring those ingredient labels, I used to think, oh my gosh, like you don't have time for that.
Right.
Nuts. And little did I know that was going to play a big role. But even just a few other ones I think could be important. Like another parent might resonate with some of these. He was always sick, so heavily congested, runny eyes, ears, always sick. Cheeks were flushed, gray circles under the eyes. Impossible to put to bed at night, very wakeful in the middle of the night, waking up at the It's like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I'd find him like snacking downstairs. Couldn't snuggle calmly, didn't like the wind, didn't like to be outside, touching the grass, couldn't toss a ball on target, couldn't tie his shoes. Even by the time he was 10, wasn't tying his shoes. Very spacey, zero impulse control. And I think the last one I would just share is the one that got me one day when a neurologist said, you know what, Mrs. Carrara, he probably won't be capable of original thought. And
oh, right. I remember you saying that.
Yeah.
That must have broken your heart. I mean, that is probably so horrible to hear. I can only imagine. Like,
yeah.
My
so
heart goes out to you.
I remember having the thoughts like, okay, this is how I was rationalizing things. I thought, okay, I have a big family. He's the youngest of 6. And my older
And now
one,
really quick, all your other children had no issues, correct?
No, that is not correct. And I'll tell you what's important about that is when I work with a family, they'll say, you know what, my other one, now that I think about it, has a little something, something over here or a little something, something over here. Nobody had it as bad as Charlie. But when I went back into the family, I'd go, ooh, this particular one had some something, something. And
because you know more now and you know better and you're like, so when you were going through that with Charlie, how long or how many years did you I don't want to say suffer, but struggle and try to figure out how long was that duration?
Yeah. That's a great question. So I would say that when it was that 9-month, when we first started seeing things, and then around 16 months when he had the early intervention, and then I got him put into school and preschool for 3 years old. They accept the children that have a learning disability. They accept them. So I was okay because I had enough. Well, I thought that he just needed more resources. I thought if he could so I was very excited that he got accepted, qualified. It's like it's funny. You're happy that they're qualified for the resources, but then you're like, shoot.
But you're not at the same time. Right.
Yeah, wait, they qualified really easily.
Right. Yeah.
But he got in there and I, even though they were so loving and so kind and, he wasn't getting better though. He was just getting worse.
Really?
And not from their doing, but the behaviors were getting worse. And
how old is this? How old was he
then?
That's
in his preschool year, so 3 and 4. And then, so we got him he was about to enter kindergarten. And that's when I was seeing a neurologist. I was often trying different avenues. So I would try Western medical because I respect that. And then I would also try more alternative type of therapies. And I would just kind of weave them together as I saw fit. But,
and kind of like make your own sort of like, journey to health for him in a lot of ways. You got to try everything, And
that's really what was happening. It's interesting what can happen to your marriage in those years too, because, and I'll stay back on topic, but when you're trying and you're so distracted, it's like you feel there's like a ticking time bomb and you've got to save him. You've got to heal him. You've got to heal him. And so it's very distracting. So you can imagine, like, even my marriage, I was like, oh yeah, I'm married to you. Oh, okay. And I would be more,
because your whole world is so consumed with helping your child. I can only imagine that's the only thing you can focus on. But you had not only a small child struggling, you had 5 or 6 other children that you had to care for.
And the one who was just a few years older than my Charlie also had some stuff going on. He had ADHD. They diagnosed him with that. He had difficulty with speech, but it was never to the degree that Charlie had. So I describe it like Charlie was drowning while the next brother up was just treading water. So I would always have to put off that next brother who I didn't get to help until later.
Right.
It was all good. And it all worked out. And that's just what showed me too, that you can have 2 children manifesting in very different ways, but with the same root cause. And bringing healing to that root cause brought healing to all the behaviors, despite the fact that their behaviors were very different.
So then at what age did you then realize
what
the kind of secret sauce is? And then how old was he then?
Great.
And then when you saw improvement?
Right before he was turning, it was about 5.5-ish.
Wow.
Close to 6. Something around that age, when the kind of like my world with the neurologists and with a functional practitioner came together, and I started to, and he was just about close to 6 years old, and that's when I really understood this gut brain connection and went down that path, and from there it still took another. So that's when I started to really see significant positive change. At that time, we did try some supplements, but I then would see what I would call like as a regression. I didn't understand at the time that, those ingredients matter. So that could be something we talk about a little bit later. But so I had to pull the supplements out, and I thought, we're just going to heal with food right now.
Okay.
And so around age 7, definitely saw huge changes in him. And at that time, though, around 7.5, because I think this is important to the story, I did try an ADHD medication because I wanted to leave no stone unturned, even though I was the person who was like, I will never medicate my child.
Right.
I was at that place where I thought, I've now done everything, and it feels like sometimes we go backwards. I don't understand. Maybe he should be on something. Maybe there's, because you always hear about the diabetic, wouldn't you give them insulin? Right. This is not the same analogy. I just want you to know. So we shouldn't, people shouldn't do that. But so I did try something. And I will tell you that it took a couple of weeks to kind of kick in for us. And then I saw this really great change. But within about a month, I didn't see that change anymore. And at the time, I also started to pull back on the dietary things I was doing. And so now I see him going back. Now I'm calling the neurologist like, oh, you need to up the dosage. The person who said you'd never, I'm like, or put me on drugs. I don't know. Which
again, any medication isn't really healing or getting at the root cause.
It's just a Band-Aid.
Helping. Exactly. It was like helping minimize the symptoms.
It really was. Right? And so, but the blessing that came out of that season was that when I pulled back on his diet and then watched that the medication no longer started to do what it was doing, I went, I was so upset. Back on my knees again. I'm like, I can't do this. I can't take it. I can't do it anymore.
That's a lot. Right.
But I'm like, I got to go back to this whole diet thing. So I did that. Okay, we get back on track. And it was when he was about 8, 9 years old when I figured out the concept of this chronic inflammation, this neural inflammation, which there is so much research that shows that those with NPD, so neuropsychiatric disorders, including, ADHD, those sorts of disorders, they have significantly increased levels of neural inflammation as opposed to their non-NPD peers. So that's when it started to click. And I went, that was the missing piece. So the gut healing diet was important, but it was understanding detox that I needed to bring in. And that's why I would see these, what I thought was regression, et cetera, was really a detox effect.
So question for you then. So you said that you had it, around 5, 6, 7, put him on the ADHD medicine. I guess the question
he was more like 7.5.
Okay. No. But the question I have is, how did you
know? He had significant healing before I went that route.
Okay. But then how did you know? Because you said he had a lot of different symptoms, right? So then when you were trying to get him, I guess, kind of diagnosed, were they saying he was neurodivergent? Were they saying he was autistic? What were they telling you? Do you know what I'm saying? And then how did you then narrow in on, or why did you take the ADHD medicine? And do you know what I'm saying?
Understood. Absolutely.
That's kind of what I wanted to, I guess, understand.
Sure. So they gave me what the neurologist after and I used a number of, I used at least 2 or maybe 3 neurologists. But anyway, so when one of them was evaluating Charlie around that age 5.5-ish, the one who told me he probably wouldn't be capable of original thought, etc. He said he's presenting as PDD-NOS, which is pervasive developmental delays not otherwise specified. They don't really use that terminology these days, but the best way to describe that is like autism light. It is on the spectrum.
Okay.
But so like I said, that was around 5.5. That's also just months before that functional practitioner uncovered the idea of the gut-brain connection. So then we went on that kind of journey. And a year later, when I was back at that neurologist, he's like, no, this is just like moderate ADHD. He didn't even consider that earlier diagnosis.
Which would make sense though, because then you're dealing with the functional, Eastern sort of holistic medicine with the Western. And I do think there's limitations with the Western. They're not as open-minded per se, right? Or to think outside the box. So it's great that you had multiple avenues of healthcare in a lot of ways that you worked with, right?
And
to kind of figure it out.
A functional doctor, I mean, she has her, they have their MD, or in this case, she's a nurse practitioner, right? Yeah. But they're more holistic. They're looking at the whole body. They'll still prescribe. She actually continued for a little while. She's the one who was the continuing prescriber for Charlie's medicine, which was even better because I thought, okay, I can be under one roof with somebody I really trust. who
Right.
wants him to be off this medication.
Right. Right.
And yeah. So
yeah, and I've worked with functional wellness practitioners too, and they helped me figure out a lot of things going on with me a few years ago with my gut. And so it makes sense. I know the importance of gut health and how with anyone, we're not, even outside of children, if you don't have a healthy gut biome, that is what leads to all disease, right? Like dis-ease, disease.
That's right.
So that's interesting.
And that
so that
gut microbiome in children, again, with autism, for instance, there is so much research that shows that there is such a greater connection of those children having that compromised gut that they're even using stool samples as a diagnostic tool to diagnose autism. And I'm like, well, instead of just diagnosing it using the stool sample that's showing such a compromised gut, use it instead to go, oh, maybe this has something to do with some of those behaviors, right?
Right.
But,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow. That's just amazing. So then explain, so once you kind of, I guess you figured out on your own the gut brain sort of connection.
That functional practitioner brought that to light for me. She did. She also had Charlie do an OATS test. OATS is an acronym for OAT. So it's an organic acid test, and it analyzes the urine. And so it helps with finding where there's nutritional deficiencies. It looks at like mycotoxins that can be having, issues with the mold. It looks at your candida levels. I mean, there's a lot of great information you can get from an OATS test. So she had performed that, and she came back with her recommendations. And that's when she really talked to me about this healing the gut and making me understand what a leaky gut is. And I remember thinking, I have to tell you, I was like, she's nuts.
Yeah. Interesting.
I was like, and I remember she gave me a script, and had she never done this, she'd given me a script for an antifungal. It was diflucan. It was a 21-day course for Charlie. I literally put it to the side. And then I came back to it a couple of weeks later. But I will tell you that on him being on that on that medication, he was really crazy for a number of days. But he had a different level of crazy all the time, so it didn't freak me out. I just was like, I said yes. I said I would do this 21 days. I'm going to stick to it. And so we did that, but I'll never forget day 8 of that course and him waking up at my bedside and saying, Mommy, you said we could go to the movies. We're going to the movies today? And I literally was like counting, because I was still counting words even at 5.5. And they were so clear. And I thought, what is this? And I thought, I didn't even pinpoint it to that prescription because we were changing so many other things.
Right.
And that in that same day and over those course of days, he watched a movie for the first time for an hour and a half. He was at our public library playing with hand puppets. Like, so much happened. And I thought, oh my gosh. So all we needed was this course of diflucan. But what I didn't understand yet is that when that course finished, is that his body had been his gut was so compromised that one course didn't do it. But you know what? It gave me a new perspective. It gave me this hope, like, oh my gosh,
he's still there. He's in there.
Yeah, he's in there.
Right.
So then it became this year of trying to find the right diet and how to do it. And
right. So why don't you share that next? Because I love for you to share, like, your background is kind of like scientific research, correct? So I feel like that, I guess in a way, like your mentality and your history, like, I think was such a great skill set to have, because I think it helped you really dig in and figure out, okay, if it's a gut brain dynamic, and we know that the gut obviously is the center of everything, but things that you're putting in your gut cause, obviously gut issues and inflammation, but then that leads to the inflammation of the brain. So all of it's connected. And so I just think what you learned and how you kind of figured out what you need to do is so helpful for our listeners. So if you wouldn't mind sharing sort of once you heard that connection, what then did you do?
Okay. So, yes. And my background, it's funny, my background was always in big pharma when I was out of college, and I had gone to school for marketing research. So I was a statistician and always looking at data. And we worked with the physicians in the aspect of surveying them so that we could report back to pharmaceutical companies to say, this is why your drugs are being prescribed. So it would help them with their marketing. So that being said, when I was doing that, I was very familiar with scientific research because I would study the disease state that we were working on so that I could really give an educated voice to what I was providing to the pharma companies. So, so data never was a scary thing for me. And back then was when I learned from a great mentor, just that he said, correlation does not equate causation. So just because two things are happening at the same, one doesn't cause another. So I always had this mindset when I looked at data to kind of step outside the box and be sure that I wasn't connecting things that actually shouldn't be connected just because they're happening at the same time. So learned about the gut-brain connection. At that time and before understanding truly the gut-brain connection, I had heard, and most parents, if they have a child with an ASD or ADHD diagnosis, et cetera, they'll hear like, oh, you got to be on that gluten-free, dairy-free diet. And I had tried that with Charlie back when he was younger, like 3.5. Did it. I was so good. Did it for a month. Nothing past that boy's lips that had any gluten or cow's dairy in it. And he was worse. And I'll explain that. But at the time, I was so excited. I was like, cool, because this is really hard and it's expensive. And but what I
will say, I think that is one of the factors. A lot of moms in particular will say, oh, well, that's too expensive. I can't afford that. And it upsets me because I feel bad that they don't have financial means, but also it upsets me because I will go without everything and anything if it meant I'd have enough money to do the right food for my child, to help my child now versus having them suffer for years on end. So,
and if I speak to that, here's what I think is really happening with that. Is that those parents don't really think it'll make a difference. So if I use my own example, the gluten-free, dairy-free, and all the costs and the expense I went through and how excited I was at the end of the month. I mean, I was, or into this like 30-day trial period, I was upset because I'm like, darn, I was hoping it'd be like one of those stories I read, like, oh, we put him on gluten-free, dairy-free, and he's a new kid.
Not that easy.
And so I had done it, and had I not continued with the journey and learned all the things I learned, I would have given up right then and said to myself, this isn't food related because I tried that. So what I didn't know back then is that it was about a digestive load. So when we talk about detox, and so I'll just jump into, using the research that I had, the kind of mind that I had, and thinking there's got to be an answer. Some kids are getting out of this and some kids are not. What are the factors that are overlapping? Where is their healing? So what I was learning was, okay, so obviously we have to, the gut is impaired. It's leaky, it's permeated. And so what that means, if somebody's watching this, not understanding what that means, is that the food that these children are eating, even if they're, I'll call them legal versus illegal when I talk to parents, even if you're eating legal food or fairly clean food, if you don't understand, what's happening is that it's still leaking into the rest of their body cavity, and it sends off an inflammatory response, which then goes through the body, and you just don't get inflamed in one area. If you're inflamed, your brain's inflamed. And so these children are going to present in such ways because they have an inflamed brain. That being said, there are times where these children will eat something, they almost appear drunk with the crazy and the maniacal and all of that, but it actually makes sense when you understand what's going on. So when I was figuring out the gut diet and understanding, like, okay, I've got to pull out more things to just answer to that gluten and dairy, it wasn't that he should be off of gluten and cow's dairy. He did need to be off of those things, but it wasn't because he was allergic to them or even, I don't like to call them food sensitivities, because over time he grew out of all of that. It was because at that time, his gut was so compromised that the load on his digestion was just too heavy for him to assimilate into his body and then process it. And he was already drowning in his body. So we're just adding more. And that's why I had to learn it wasn't just gluten and dairy. It was, okay, we've got to pull out the dyes. We've got to pull out the preservatives, the corn.
Processed, everything that's processed.
The processed food.
Soy. All of these are a lot of foods that even you and I shouldn't be eating necessarily, let alone children, but children, who are presenting,
these
issues like this.
Systems.
Right. Yeah. Right. It's so much more prevalent in them, and there's so little, they don't have the strength and the means to fight it off. And I think to your point, parents don't know that So if they already have this issue and they're inflamed, and then you think, oh, well, I'll eat healthy, but you're still not putting the right stuff in, they're just getting more and more buildup and more and more inflammation. So your body, poor little bodies are never getting a break from it, right?
That's right. That's right. And I'll describe it sometimes to a parent. If a parent calls me, maybe they're thinking about coaching with me, so I'll give them a free call. We just kind of chat a little bit, and I learn about what's going on. I'll say to them, I want you just to imagine that your child is like a bucket, right? And their bucket is so full. And so they no longer can process everything that you're giving them. And they'll say, but everything's organic that I give them. And I'll say, yeah, but it's not just about it being organic. If you, I like to joke too, like a martini can be organic, and that's alcohol and toxic. So it's not about just being organic. It's about understanding that at this time, the digestive load needs to be so light so that the body is freed up to start ridding itself of the inflammation that it's been carrying for years.
Right. And I think what a lot of parents don't understand, and the only reason I say this is because I know my sister will give me examples of her seeing, women out there and moms. A lot of, and not even just moms, a lot of people don't realize how important it is to read the labels and read the ingredients. Our food is so overly processed, and I'm so glad RFK is tackling that right now because it is really bad. And I have a lot of gut issues. There's a lot of things I cannot eat because I have either sensitivities or what have you. It's a laundry list. I won't get started. But what I think is so important is that if you're not reading the ingredients, none of your food should have a laundry list of ingredients like this. It's garbage. I mean, I don't mean to be rude or seem like a crazy person, but it truly is garbage. If you look at all those ingredients, they're so toxic and you're feeding it to your child who already has all these issues. So you're actually making it more compounded and worse for them. And and they're innocent and they don't know. And if you don't know, and it just makes me sad for the whole family,
Yeah. And on that same line of thinking, there are a lot of food companies that will make these supposedly healthy foods and all the ingredients are organic. But I'll tell a parent, even if you have a label and there's 10 ingredients and they're all organic and they're clean, it's still 10 ingredients at once that have been processed. And so the first thing I do is I tell them, we're going to just use real food right now.
I was just going to say that you're a big proponent of whole food, meats, vegetables, fruit. Whole real food, not anything in a bag that's processed, not a bunch of chips, not a bunch of, I know like my nieces love eating certain like not gummies, but like healthy fruit roll-ups or whatever you call it. You know what I mean?
And it's nice though to know if you know how to look, like that's one of the things I help a parent. Like I teach them so they're not stuck working with me forever. I teach them what you're, I mean, not that I'm not fun to be with, but they don't want to hang out with me all the time.
Well, I think what you're doing is as you're coaching them, you're also empowering them and giving them that strength to make the best and right decisions for their child and for their family, which is so helpful, right?
Yes. And so sometimes I'll get from a parent, it'll just be, they'll just message me or email me or something, the label from a package. And they'll say, is this okay? And I'll come back and go, what do you think? Because I want them to see.
Right.
I want them to see. And so one thing that I think is important to mention too, when I was doing the gut healing diet and following a very strict gut healing diet, and Charlie, I mean, it's important to know that he wasn't getting that many foods. And I was still like in bondage over this diet because we couldn't go anywhere. He couldn't eat that many things. Yeah, he was getting better, but our family was miserable. And, so that was really challenging. And so one of the things that when I started to figure out the detox, I thought, wait a second, his body, this body was created by a God who wanted to enjoy food and to be able to digest food. And so I started also throwing caution to the wind just in certain areas. Like, for instance, I'll get a parent who'll say, well, I was told I can't have fruit. And I was told, or the child can't have food. I said, yeah, nope. I say yes. All fruits, all vegetables, unless you have an absolute, like, let's say you have a true salicylate allergy. I'll say, okay, then you're not going to have the foods because there are also like homegrown foods that have salicylates in them. And I understand that. But for the most part, I'm like fruits, vegetables, meats, fish. And then I'll say like almond milk or rice milk. And then for the oils, You know,
well, we know no seed oils. Everyone knows, hopefully should know that.
Yeah. And I try to give them the yes foods as opposed to what they can't have. So I'll say olive oil, coconut oil, and avocado oil. Just stick with those 3. You're good.
Right.
You can figure it out.
But the funny thing is that that's what all of us should be doing. Like, I think there's certainly some education still needed when people don't realize how toxic seed oils are and how they're really made and processed. And everyone should be eating olive oil, avocado, and or coconut oil. Those are the 3 best. And I just wish more restaurants only use those oils. Like, do you know what I mean? So I am hoping they're, with RFK now on board, I really do hope we have a major change in our country for so many reasons, that being one of them. But I guess what I wanted to ask too, as you mentioned, so you understand this connection between the gut and the brain, and it's all causing inflammation throughout. And then you're saying, okay, you need to detox, and you share with your clients, this is sort of what you need to do for food. This is a yes food. This is a no food.
Yes.
And you need to do this. How long of a duration? Obviously, every child's different based on their needs. So how long are you telling parents in your coaching that they need to be detoxing for?
Okay. So if you had somebody, let's say you were a dietitian or a physical trainer, and you have different clients, and one of them is 100 pounds overweight and one's only 10 pounds overweight, there's obviously going to be a different journey there, right? So I always tell the person, like, if I can get you to first understand what we're doing and get you to start seeing the benefits, that question will actually fall away of how long do I have to do this for? Because you're going to eventually come to this place and you're going to say, oh my gosh, why have I not been always doing this? Because I do it in such a way that it's not like when I did that first gut healing protocol that Charlie was having like 5 foods. I don't do it that way. I teach them there are so many foods using non-inflammatory diet on how to eat. And I also, the other thing I teach them though is by the way their child, I'll just say, manifests different symptoms. Some kids get very angry. Some kids are very impulsive or unfocused. I mean, think about the list that I didn't fully read of all those bullet points that your kid can.
It can run the gamut for each child, and each child's so different. We know.
Exactly. And nothing surprises me anymore. I'll get parents like, oh my gosh, I'm getting a lot of parents who their children are pulling their hair out, their eyebrows out, their eyelashes out. And they do this. Or bedwetters, so many problems that you would think are just more anxiety related, or like the parent that came to me with the child, I've had 2 now with the hair pulling, etc. Both of those children were in counseling. And one of them in particular, not only was in counseling, they were trying to find different times of the day that child would be free if they wanted to pull at their hair, etc. And we do this with our children. We'll say, you can go run around like they used to let Charlie have free time in the gym for 45 minutes with his 1-to-1 aide. He used to have you know how expensive it is to get a 1-to-1 aide? Well, Charlie.
Oh, I can imagine.
1-to-1 aide in a severe learning disabled classroom. That's what he needed. That's how bad it was. 2 years later, he was mainstreamed. I mean, that's how incredible this was. But my point is that, so they allowed him to run around the gym. And I tried to get him outside all the time. I even bought one of those little trampolines. I thought if we could just get this energy out. And what I didn't realize is that, well, we shouldn't actually have all that energy to get out. That's a symptom of brain inflammation. So this particular mom, that had her child in the therapy, she was given intervals. The counselor gave them intervals when the child could scratch and could pull and all that. And mom was sharing it with me, and I was very kind, but I said, you don't have to share this with me. You're just going to do this protocol with me. It's literally going to be like a moot point that you're sharing. You don't have to get her a special brush. That child, over the course of 6 weeks, no more hair pulling.
And so you're saying that child, you did 6 weeks of this detox, healthy diet, and all that. So that was 6 weeks.
Now we have other children who don't have much language, for instance, you know, and they're going to go longer. They're going to go months. But if I can get a parent to just put it this way, this is what I sometimes will say to parents. And I'm not skirting your question either. I really want you to hear this, is that, you had a child, right? Normal, typical little baby. They're crawling.
Hitting the milestones, right?
Yeah. We never say, but when are they going to walk? But when are they going to, meanwhile, they're like moving along, right? They start cruising. Now they're holding onto the furniture. We never get upset. When are they going to walk? No, because we see them reaching the milestones now. We see them moving forward. Well, I tell parents what's going to happen is you're going to watch your child slowly change and have all these behaviors fall away that you think right now that your biggest question is, but for how long? But for how long?
Right.
You're really just looking for an answer, but what's going to work?
Right.
So I try to pull them back to just when you see it working, just already know you've made it.
And it could be a teeny tiny little win, but for this child, it's a huge milestone, right? So like, I know a lot of children
to move forward.
Right. In a positive direction.
That's
exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So when I work with a parent, we begin with the wins. What did you see? And it's really funny because we could be on week 4 and the mom starts to give me the struggles of that week per se. And I'll go, wait, hold on. We didn't talk about your wins. Okay. We get the wins, but this happened during this. And I'll say, what about 3 months ago? Could your child have done just that? No. I'm like, yeah. So I'm constantly bringing them back. Like, do you
having to remind them?
Come?
Right.
So if that's happened, what I say to them is, if that's happened, the brain's healing. You're going to keep going. You're going to keep going. You're going to keep going. You're not going to stop. And so when I coach parents, it's wrapping the mom's head around this new lifestyle in a way that is palatable, pun intended, for them so that they can realize they can still have a life.
Right.
Because like I said earlier, I saw a lot of healing with Charlie, but he was eating like 5 foods and it was miserable. And we were just still fighting in a different prison. So when I learned that there were so many other foods that we could eat, and the reason I like to coach personally with someone is I can hear where their child is. And if I see like, oh, then they did this, they eat these sorts of things, and then they started having these behaviors, I'll go, oh, we're going to pull back. A lot of times they'll say, I want you to pull back on the flour-based foods that we're using. Like, even if it's quote unquote legal, like millet or amaranth or arrowroot or rice flour, etc. We might still pull those back right now because they're a little heavier on the digestive tract. And we're going to lean into more of your fruits and your vegetables, etc., so that we can allow this detox to continue.
So then you're saying every child's different. It'd be a minimum of 6 weeks, 2, 3, 4 months. It could run the gamut, right? Like it all depends. Okay. Yes. And then you're not saying they need to be on this diet forever. We are just working on getting everything under control, getting the gut and the brain to work together to get rid of the inflammation. And then slowly you can introduce like pizza, for example, and then see how your child reacts. And like, so example for Charlie, you did this when he was a lot younger. And now at his age, he's able to eat everything.
He eats everything to the point where I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What did you just buy for the movies? He's like, what? Mike and Ike. So I'm like, Charlie, and he'll look at me and go, but Mom, I'm healed. I'm like, that's garbage.
It's still garbage. They shouldn't eat it. Right.
Yes. And it's poison. And I let him hear that. And he goes, Mom, I haven't had it in so long. I'm just going to have this for them. I'm like, okay, but it's a treat. He knows.
Right.
But he knows. And so, baby steps.
Got it. So then it's okay then as they've become more healed to have like pizza at a birthday party or what have you, or eat regular. But then when you start seeing maybe some of those symptoms flare up again, you and the child at this point, if they're older, know, oh, maybe I need to like cut back on that. Right.
Yeah. And so I want to speak exactly to that about like bringing foods back on.
Right.
Parents will often, and what they'll say to me is, but when can we get back to normal?
I know. When can we go out to eat as a family? And I know that's, something a lot of families struggle with.
Yep. And I'll say to them, I know that it's hard, but it's hard because you're trying to follow a norm that was never correct anyway. Right.
Exactly.
So I'm always helping them find the substitute for what their child does love. And I constantly come back to, remember, parent, this is not food allergies. So because sometimes what they'll then do is like they'll find the label on the food that has 10 ingredients, let's just say, even 5, but they're a little bit not okay. And I'm going, but why would you push that right now? We just want your child to be so strong and so healthy that then they can take on the food that you're trying to, we need to heal and seal their gut.
Right. Heal and seal. I kind of like that.
Heal and seal the gut. And so that when you start taking on other food, you're going to be okay.
Thanks for listening to Second Act Sessions. Be sure to check out part 2 in the next episode, where we dive even deeper into this conversation. See you there.